The perennial philosophy of the doctrine of creation states that when examining the natural world, one should assume stable form and function, and that wherever there is design, there must be a designer. Welcome to Cylindrical Physics Volume 1, an exercise in visual pattern recognition. Empiricism, a method of inquiry by which a postulation can be verified or disproved by direct evidence, measurement, or experiment. Core axioms. All maps are scale models of reality. Latitude and longitude are points on an Earth map projection that help you find a specific location. The scale of a map is the ratio used to correct the distance on the map projection to the corresponding distance on the ground. We now have empirical evidence of the true Earth map. The following is a series of Earth map projections. As a general rule, the horizontal red lines are latitude and the vertical red lines are longitude. As these lines intersect, they create bounded areas. The bounded areas of each projection cover the same area of Earth as the corresponding bounded areas on the other projections. The shapes of the bounded areas influence the shape of the continents contained therein. Despite the subtle differences, these are the same land masses. Here are several different projections of Africa. Notice the shape of the continent and the angles on the coastline changes. This is because of the coordinate system. When the bounded area is largely composed of wide rectangles, Africa becomes squat and wide. When the bounded area is largely composed of tall, thin rectangles, Africa becomes tall and thin. When the bounded areas containing Western Africa are thinner than the ones containing Central and Eastern Africa, Western Africa becomes noticeably more stout. The same thing happens with the other continents. The eastern edge of South America can be either pointed or flat, depending on the coordinate system. On the left is a cylindrical coordinate system, where the top line is the North Pole and the bottom line is the South Pole. Cylindrical map projections are the ones most people are most familiar with. On the right is a polar coordinate system, where the center point is the North Pole and the outermost circle is the South Pole. We can convert between coordinate systems. The top line in the cylindrical coordinate system becomes the central point in the polar coordinate system. The bottom line in the cylindrical coordinate system becomes the outermost circle in the polar coordinate system. The conversion also works in reverse. These conversions are easy to do in any image manipulation program, such as Photoshop or GIMP. If the geographic center, which is represented by the red dot, of the coordinate system is misaligned from the magnetic center, which is represented by the collapse point of the concentric latitudes, a waveform will be introduced in the conversion. This is analogous to the disparity between the magnetic and geographic north poles on Earth. In this coordinate system, the geographic center is different from the magnetic center of the coordinate system. Notice the waveform in the latitudes of the converted cylindrical projection. Even in the more exotic coordinate systems, the bounded areas cover the same areas of Earth. Equivalence between coordinate systems is verifiable by manipulating the bounded areas into the same shape. In order to convert A into B, we will first convert the polar coordinate system A into cylindrical coordinate system A prime, and we will convert polar coordinate system B into cylindrical coordinate system B prime. B prime has squares for every bounded area. Therefore, the bounded areas of A prime must all be converted into squares. Upon converting the irregular bounded areas of A prime into the regular squares of A double prime, equivalence between A double prime and B prime has been verified. Notably, the Americas have increased in size. Africa has shrunk slightly. South America and Australia have moved to the right, and Europe has moved to the left, all in accordance with straightening the zigzagging longitudes. Converting A double prime back to polar verifies equivalence between the original polar projection B as well. Even the largest ground-based objects, such as mountains and skyscrapers, shrink and fade to obscurity at distances of several dozen miles. In fact, only 2 objects are visible from every location on the surface of the Earth: the Sun and the Moon. The Sun is a source, a locus, if you will, of blinding light, more or less devoid of discernible features. The Moon, on the other hand, not only possesses discernible features, those features are its defining characteristic. The other defining characteristic of the Moon is its phases: new to waxing to full to waning and back to new. An eternal cycle. This introductory episode will focus exclusively on the first quarter moon phase, better known as the waxing half moon. I must stress, this is not an arbitrary half moon, but the half moon is defined in observable reality by the shadow terminator line. Take note of the discernible features of the waxing half moon. An interesting thing happens if you mirror the moon and focus on the waxing half. Let's apply an unsharp mask filter to make the darks slightly darker and the lights slightly lighter. Finally, we'll apply a coordinate system. Let's revisit the off-center polar to cylindrical conversion to convert our polar moon image into a cylindrical one. Apply continental boundaries. Apply coordinate system. Color the land green and the water blue. Let's deconstruct this and examine it in more detail. Let's begin with an unmanipulated moon image. Let's ensure the accuracy of the continental outlines. Let's address the anomalies which are present in the moon image, but left out of the outline. Every one of these anomalies are present in relief maps of the Earth which show the elevated lands underwater. Let's look at East Asia. China, Korea, Japan, Yellow Sea area. Separating the light from the dark reveals the shape of the land underneath. In Japan and Korea become instantly recognizable and at the appropriate latitude and longitude. South of Japan are several long arms of land clearly visible on the moon and on relief maps. South and east of this area, between Australia and the Americas, is the largest anomaly on the map. Relief maps show us this is Eastern Oceania, that is Micronesia, Melanesia, and Polynesia. Over 10,000 islands scattered across tens of millions of square miles of ocean. East of South America, off the southern coast of Brazil, is the Rio Grande Plateau, or the Rio Grande Rise, clearly visible on relief maps. 120 to 270 miles west of the coast of India's southwestern Malabar coast lie the Lakshadweep Islands, clearly visible on relief maps. 450 miles south of this, along the Chagos Laccadive Ridge, are the Maldives. East of this is the 90 East Ridge, which, unsurprisingly, rides the 90 East longitude. Off the western coast of northern Namibia in Africa lies the Walvis Ridge. Between South Africa and Madagascar is the Mozambique Ridge. In conclusion, not only are all continents visible on the moon and consistent with stated latitude and longitude, all major ocean ridges on world relief maps are present and consistent as well. Only 2 objects are visible from every location on the surface of the Earth, and the only one with discernible features bears every location on the surface of the Earth as those discernible features. This is not a coincidence. The next episode will cover the magnetodielectric field as an electric circuit, and deal with how and why a plasma projection of a geographic terrain through a magnetic field will bear distortions due to the presence of that magnetic field. Welcome to Selenetical Physics, Volume 2, Reflections on the Electric Field. Having established that the only object with discernible features visible from every location on the surface of the Earth bears every location on the surface of the Earth as those discernible features, we'll now assemble the building blocks as to how the larger scale structure of our physical realm correlates with the moon projection, beginning with a primer on the electric field. A wave is not what something is. A wave is what something does. In the simplest terms, a wave is a motion or an oscillation of a material. In a transverse wave, the material is oscillating perpendicular to the direction of wave propagation, creating crests and troughs. In a longitudinal wave, the material is oscillating parallel to the direction of wave propagation, creating compressions, which are areas of increased density, and rarefactions, which are areas of decreased density. A sound wave is an example of a longitudinal wave. Electric fields are ubiquitous and practically synonymous with life, being present in all environments, as well as all biological organisms and many everyday man-made items. The electric field is an energy circuit, a union comprised of 2 essential components always, the magnetic field and the dielectric field. These are cross-sections of the electric fields of a single conductor in a system of conductors. The conductors are the black holes in the images, which act as poles of the circuit. In the single conductor, the poles are focused on the center, with one pole being behind the other. This is similar to the polar projection in Volume 1 of this series, where the North Pole is the center and the South Pole is the outer ring. In the system of conductors, both poles are represented by black holes. The circles propagating outward from the conductors are the magnetic field. In the single conductor, the circles are concentric. In the system of conductors, the circles are eccentric. The radial dotted lines are the dielectric field. The relation between the magnetic and the dielectric is the magnetic is parallel to the conductor and the dielectric is perpendicular to the conducting surface. This also means that lines of magnetic and dielectric inductive force are orthogonal or perpendicular to one another at all points. Lines of magnetic force close on themselves. They are divergent, expansive, and create space. Lines of dielectric force terminate on conductors. They are convergent, contractive, and collapse to counter space, becoming magnetism. An aid to understanding the concept of counter space is the eye of a hurricane. In the context of a hurricane, at this point of serenity in the center, around which the torrential storm rages, there is no hurricane. This zone of nothing that the vortex of the hurricane is focused around is counter space. Here, the cross-section of the electric field of a system of conductors is compared to a photograph of a magnet under a ferrocell. We can see the poles of the magnet are equivalent to the conductors. The shape of the magnetic field lines are clearly visible. What is commonly referred to as magnetism is actually the dielectric field. Magnetic and dielectric fields have the ability to shape and even contain plasma phenomena. When comparing the cross-section of an electrical circuit to the coordinate system on the moon, latitude is the magnetic field component of the electrical circuit. Longitude is the dielectric field component of the electrical circuit. The direction of material motion on Earth is best described as a westward circle. This is the direction the sun, moon, and other celestial etheric bodies travel in our sky. A wave propagating parallel to this circular westward motion is a longitudinal wave. A wave propagating perpendicular to this circular westward motion is a transverse wave. The lines of longitude, unsurprisingly, form a longitudinal wave with a compression just east of the antimeridian and a rarefaction just west of the prime meridian. These zones are also the maximum and minimum in the transverse interference pattern formed by the latitude. This means the Atlantic Ocean is expanded both laterally and longitudinally, while the Pacific Ocean is compressed both laterally and longitudinally. Similar to the electric circuit, where the dielectric field lines represent what is commonly referred to as magnetism, on the moon projection, the longitude lines represent what is commonly referred to as Earth's magnetic field. The transverse motion of electrical energy is represented by a field of eccentric circles rather than concentric circles. Energy is conveyed longitudinally, that is radially, from the primary pole to the secondary pole. The primary pole is north. Clearly demarcated is the collapse point of the eccentric circles of latitude and the radial intersection of the lines of longitude. Therefore, the secondary pole should be at the radial intersection at the other end of the longitudinal compression. It should at this point be noted that the longitudinal compression area corresponds directly to the deepest parts of the known ocean. The 7 deepest parts of the known oceans are in this area of the antimeridian Pacific Ocean: the Mariana, Tonga, Philippine, Kuril, Kermadec, Bonin, and the Japan Trenches. Likewise, the Atlantic Ridge runs the entire north to south span of the Atlantic longitudinal rarefaction and is shallow ocean. More on this in Volume 4. The final prerequisite concept we'll introduce is one of curved reflective surfaces. Understanding this concept is vital to proper interpretation of southern latitudes on the full moon Earth projection and to deducing the large-scale structure of our realm. Curved reflective surfaces can be used to create distortions, as well as to resolve distorted images. Generally speaking, convex reflections are divergent and compress images along the axes of convexity, while concave reflections are convergent and expand images along the axes of concavity. In addition to this expanding effect, concave reflective surfaces have two very specific and relevant properties. One, they reflect light inward and can focus that light, generating a source of intense heat, a locus if you will, at a particular distance from the reflecting surface. Two, they project images into the real world at a particular distance from the reflecting surface, known simply as real images. These real images are always inverted. This is not a coincidence. These concepts will be combined into a coherent model of reality in future volumes, after a full moon data analysis in Volume 3.
Welcome to the billion imperfections of a brilliant perfectionist. For years I've been perfecting this, the theory and the evidence, the heresy, the declaration of war, a formal invocation of law, the collision of time and space, the distilling of God's metaphysical essence, presented in lyrical poem, a megalith inscripted upon Septuagint scriptures and psalms, letters, myths, and testaments of extra-biblical sorts, forbidden histories deliberately lost to memory, equivalent of infinite shots of Hennessy, this human condition of ignorance fraught with mystery, where knowledge given thee is typically false empirically, illusions on the idiot boxes who deceive through the ministries of Disney and Fox and BET. A proto-tech global theocracy, a motive of profits weak. The goal of the block that seeks control of the mob is the dethroning of God, achieved through modus of operandi of hokum and sophistry, a sinister plot to render critical logic centers dissonant, cognitively twisted and knocked and weakened mentally, then ultimately distant from source. Reposition your course and re-enlist in the cause of freeing men from this motley prison. St. John has lit the bombs, awakened, the clock is ticking, apocalypse inbound. Break the dam and watch a flood of common sense rain down upon a posse full of insane clowns. The Anunnaki of the MK crowd on a midday prowl through the cities of great lights, massive inquisition, superstitions, and slave rights. That was all religion, new religion's the same type. This new religion is named science, capricious and paid liars, pernicious and vain, who've made unscrupulous, ludicrous claims about the lunatics that just stayed right. The moon resembles the plane, right? Beneath the continent in true position in same size. The proof is simple, man, the truth is hidden in plain sight. That's why they hide the true image of Earth, define it as spinning and curved, deprive you of intimate knowledge of your existence and worth. Bribe your consent to coerce and lie to your children from birth. Comic book villainous personages, agendas and work. Knowledge and wisdom perverted, all of the systems inverted, morals, judicial and learning doctrines and symbols of worship. An unlimited circus tenor diversions built to preserve multi-generational products of mental subversion. The whispering serpent taught you to sin in his virtuous, mocked you and stripped you of courage, taunted you endless to turn to gluttonous, envious thirst, slothful ascensions, a scourge of drama, addicted jerks, intolerant temperance averse, they wallow in pity and hurt. Pride is the sin, is the worst. The monsters that did this deserve no longer to live on this earth. Ungodly, befallen, wicked and cursed. Toxic, rotten, despicable curs. The arbor of liberty thirst. This American expression isn't merely a suggestion, it's imperative, and there be your protection. Merriam and Webster meet Remington and Wesson. You shield against imperial aggression. The serial oppressors use smear and misdirection to belittle you, pervering your intestine. The cure to save your spirit from infection is this miracle injection. Here's another lesson. This theater is projection of the dimension the mirror is reflected in. It's interior and kept within the sphere of your most desperate inner fears. It is a test you as an individual are a division of God's indivisible essence, technically a prism of thought, dipped in evanescence and resurrected in physical form. Via spiritual bond connected through the mind, an architecture sentient and divine. A gestalt as impressive and refined, you be hard pressed and reticent to find. God bless the unrepentant, gentle-witted blind, whoever deny the plethora of evident design exhibited by the vessels in which they reside. Let me simplify it. What's the length of time it takes a load of metal in a mind to mold together and combine with other elements, decide to go electrical, some wiring, let alone synthesize a genetic code intertwined, double helical, which provides a perfect record of every kind, every letter and every line without the requisite designer. The cause is not coincidence in time. Ironic that a product of intelligent design is too retarded to exercise intelligence in kind. The seated, the celestial divide, discreetly and objectively sublime. The speaker of the testament is I. Heed the lecture, read the signs, reconnect and redefine your predilections, recombine them to a highly lethal weapon, aimed directly at the pyramidal eye. The evidence is written in the sky. Their rhetoric's conflicted and contrived, a grifting enterprise, a twisted web of lies and mysticism, misidentified as wisdom. Get dehypnotized and listen, add to your defenses, a cast of mortal instruments to challenge your conventions. Battle horns, the shatterstone of Matterhorn dimensions. Gravel falls on Babylon's descendants, the crash of all the astronomic fiction, the crack that will collapse the whole deception. Pass it forward, bask in your reflection, take the path to your ascension. The human is the rubric, get the beautiful confluence of Buddha, Allah, Mithras, the Jewish, Yahweh, Krishna, Methuselah, Caligula, Kubla Khan, Anubis, Cthulhu, and Jah, crossing the Rubicon with Judas, the quintessential nexus at the pinnacle of excellence. Ventriloquist, Da Vinci, pen in Genesis and Exodus, encrypted is the message, inches scribbled to the left. The mirror image of terrestrial is written in the heavens.